Mary Richardson.
Growing up in California, Mary Richardson, the daughter of a naval officer, never imagined that one day she would become a successful television newswoman in a major city.
Tonight, Peter Mahegan, Mary Richardson.
In fact, it happened almost by accident. Mary was a high school teacher in Sacramento and had decided to make a change. 11 years ago, she walked into a newsroom and was hooked.
The first day that I arrived in a newsroom, I knew I had found my place in life. I knew this was the job that I always wanted to have. And everything in my life came together there. My family had always been sort of current affairs oriented. At the dinner table, all we discussed was news events and so on. And I never realized that you could be creatively putting together pieces about the news events of the day and involved in news making yourself. It brought everything together for me that I'd ever wanted to do, and I knew I never wanted to leave. And I still don't.
But how about being one of the few women really involved in those days? What was that like?
There were difficulties for women starting in those days. When I came into the newsroom, there were 60 people, one black woman reporter, and I was the only white woman reporter, and there was a white anchor woman. The men in the newsroom had not been used to working with women before. One of my bosses told me the reason they didn't hire women was women tended to cry when things got too tense or too uptight in the newsroom. Another of my bosses said, well, I could see you. He said, I sort of see you as the girl next door. I could see you, you know, covering a bake sale or a fashion show, but he said, I could never see sending you on a double murder.
Well, in fact, your first big story was the one that involved Squeaky Fromme, attempted assassination of Gerald Ford, right?
27-year-old Lynette Alice Fromme was nicknamed Squeaky because of her high-pitched voice. She was one of the earliest
all of a sudden, Gerald Ford was whisked away by the FBI agents. He came right in front of me. They were dragging him away, and someone shouted, she's got a gun, she's got a gun. And I looked over, and one of the Manson girls, who I had interviewed before, was being held up against a tree. She had a bizarre red, almost like a witch's costume on. And I realized who she was right away. I went out in the street and I hailed a taxi cab, grabbed my cameraman and said, let's go to the Manson home where they are. And we arrived before the FBI did, which was really a coup. That was my first big story. The cameraman...
Obviously, Mary quickly proved herself. And after only a few years in the business, she moved east and became Boston's first major female anchorwoman.
And the District of Columbia. Still to come on News Center 5 tonight, India mourns the death of...
What other stories working in Boston, even before Channel 5 days, really stand out as memorable?
The papal visit to Boston, I think, has to stand out for me. No matter how many stories you've covered or what you've done, to actually ride on the Pope's plane from Ireland to Boston and to hear him say, as he said to us, he said, you journalists, he said, you work pretty hard. And he says, I bless your work. It was really very, very moving experience.
Do you think because Chronicle focuses on one subject for a half an hour, and that is its signature, that maybe it might even be more fun journalistically than this quick on-site reporting?
It might be. I always get a kick out of the news. I get a kick out of being able to run out and in a hurry put something together and get it on the air that night. That pleases me. But to be able to spend that amount of time and to do live interviews, the show really affords me some opportunities I didn't have before.
Okay, ready, rolling, and go.
Parents Anonymous is a group that provides hope and understanding. It is a group
You have a reputation as a lady of great dignity. I can say that because I work in the same building where you work. I think many women in the building look up to you. And I wonder why. Why are you different, and how do you maintain that kind of giving off of this dignity and quality?
I tend to be a team player, I think. I like to think that we're all in this together, and my biggest thrill in the news business is when we have a major news event, like the president coming to Boston, and we all work together, we all do our jobs, and it comes off at night and it's beautifully done. That, to me, is the biggest thrill. It's more of a thrill than if I individually, you know, happen to do a good job on a story. There's just a feeling there that can't be duplicated in any other business, I'm convinced. So I tend to see people around the building. I tend to see people, whether they work in the art department or they're on the Chiron machine or the floor man who helps direct the show, as we're all in this together. And maybe that's what it is. I don't think it's necessarily anything I give off other than I'm not into any sort of star system. I don't believe in that.
That's 3 tapes. You got a long piece on...
I tend to see the big picture. I think when I'm on my deathbed, I don't want to look back and say, oh my gosh, I rushed right through life. I didn't have time for people. I was too busy. I didn't enjoy myself. I want to enjoy myself, and I want to enjoy people.
While Mary's career has been exciting and rewarding, it has not always been easy. She's had to juggle success with her commitments as a wife and a mother.
Did you watch Chronicle tonight?
Yes, I did. I watched you on TV, Mommy.
You did? And who was I on TV with?
With Peter Mahegan.
Peter Mahegan, right.
Mary lives in Belmont with her husband, Paul, an assistant district attorney, and 2 children, Chris, 16, and Jessica, who added great joy to the family just 2.5 years ago.
As we mentioned earlier, there is a new addition to the News Center 5 team. My colleague Mary Richardson has given birth to a 7-pound, 12.5-ounce baby girl. Jessie Kellogg Richardson was born at 8:40 this morning at Beth Israel Hospital. Jessie, who didn't seem at all to be impressed by our cameras, 19.5 inches long. She and her mom are doing
Will
just
Chronicle allow you more time with Paul, Chris, and Jessie?
Well, absolutely. Not only there, but in the workplace, it'll allow me more time with my stories, with my people and my stories. So it's a wonderful move for me on all fronts. One, I will be off of weekends, which of course is the perfect family time. There have been no trips to the zoo and things like that for us, and there will be now. And the other part of it is it's a totally different type of story where, last week, for example, it's more like what you do. I got to spend a whole afternoon talking to families who'd had suicide victims in that. And if that isn't an eye-opener, and even the kind of experience you can relate to your own life and raising teenagers and so on, I think I'm going to really enjoy that.
It's worth it for me because I kind of get a kick out of it. It's fun to see her on the news and things like that. So I don't dislike her being on there at all. It just, it means doing extra things, like sometimes doing your own laundry and not having someone home when you come home from school, but, they're just sort of minor things you have to give up.
Even though we don't spend as much time together, the fact that both of us are energized by our own work, feel productive in our own lines of work, makes for maybe a happier, more contented person, and probably that person can exist in a better way in a relationship, and I think it tends to work that way for us. I feel in many respects like I'm the luckiest guy around, and I've always felt that, and I've been fortunate with the person I married, and am fortunate in my family situation.
Your life as it is right now, it sounds like you're very focused on doing a good job, not going for the stars, and raising a good family. Is that really what, if you got it all?
Yeah, I do. I have it all. I do wish that the clock would somehow slow down sometimes. It's just sometimes too busy. But that's all. That's my only complaint. I have it all. I have a super family. I have darling kids. I have a wonderful husband, and I have a great job. So what else do you ask for? We have this old house that we're fixing up. We're having fun doing that. I just wish there was a little more time to savor things. And I think there's a certain art to living, which I'm learning slowly.
Well, boy, I have to tell you, Mary Richardson is a wonderful person, and you did a wonderful job with that.
Well, I don't want to sound like the old Joy Bishop show, but I have to tell you, I think Channel 5 is richer for having a lady with that kind of quality.
Oh, absolutely.
As a part of our...